If that goes blank, holler, because that means it needs new batteries.
Okay.
I do put those up on the web, on YouTube. You can see where I, notice I didn't even get my face in these, but you know, that's. Thank you. Don't forget to send me everything if you have. That was the end of last summer. So I post them there. It's YouTube 2, not YouTube 1. When they made us switch to Gmail, that gave me like this whole new account thing, and I discovered I ended up with a new YouTube account instead of the old one. So my earlier account is YouTube 1, but I can actually upload things on both of them, but that's kind of just weird. So I put those up there so that if you miss class, I'm not suggesting you could just like take the class by not even coming, because all the assignments can be sent via email. And of course, if I'm trying to video all the classes, you can literally watch it without actually coming to class. But especially if we have ice storms and things of that sort, you might not be able to make it. I'm absolutely convinced that it's a much better deal to actually come and be in a face-to-face discussion over the topics. But I do try to make it so that you can actually still attend, even if you're, say, deployed, if you're military, or anything of that sort. Especially have feelings for folks that are in the military, because I'm retired Army myself. So that's just, I retired in '94. In fact, I love showing my first duty station. Imagine I ask people, what does that look like to you? But you don't have to answer that. So that could be, if they had built that in Frankfurt instead of Berlin, they probably would have called the site Frankenkock. Just a thought,
It's a radar station?
I can't say, actually. It's one of those things. Even though it's been torn down, and it's not actually been torn down, it's just really, you can see it's been trashed. It's falling apart. Lots of graffiti. The Germans have been thinking about what they could do with it. It's the highest point in the city, so they actually have a ski slope on the sides. So. And Berlin is like a marsh, so that's kind of interesting that it's called Teufelsberg, which is Devil's Mountain. And the reason it's even there is because all the rubble from World War II, all the destroyed buildings, that's where they piled it all up. So that's why that's there. And then they put a communications site on the top. But I was stationed there as a Russian linguist, so I suppose that. Я еще говорю очень хорошо по-русски. If anyone else speaks Russian. Здравствуйте. And while I was in Germany, I learned German. Also, ich spreche auf Deutsch sehr gut. Nach einer Bier bitte. Kann sagen. And my first foreign language was French. So je parle français un peu. Actually, I speak more than a little, but I guess it's okay. And Latin. I had Latin in high school.
I wish we had Latin in high school.
You had Latin in high school?
No, I wish we did.
Yeah, my teacher the one year was Father Van. gosh, I can't think of his name offhand. I'm old enough now that I'm like, what? Why can't I remember Thomas Kuhn or something? Von Breda was his name. And he was Dutch. So that was kind of interesting. It is.
Great.
It is. But he was Dutch, and I remember when he would get angry with us, he would say "Gurfverdamme," which I figured out, you know. So I learned some Dutch too.
You gonna tell us what that means?
No,
No.
but you can figure that out, right? Gotverdamme. That's very close to say "God damn it."
Yeah,
Oh.
I was gonna say, it sounds like.
Yeah, you don't have to, you know. Same thing with German. German is actually, yeah, I had one semester in college and I realized, all you have to do is speak English with a German accent when you're speaking German. So, it's like, no point in spending more money. Especially when I did get to live in Germany, so you're immersed and you end up learning a lot. So that was all cool. But the best of those experiences was spending a year at the Defense Language Institute, Monterey, California. And oh my goodness, that was the absolute best educational experience I've ever had. Because it was actual immersion, you know, in Russian for a year. And that was amazing, actually amazing. It was hard, but I mean, are you here for philosophy?
Yes. This is it.
Yes, is it? Usually I'd say something like Willkommen or something, and that really screws people up because then they leave. So I shouldn't do that. Oh, but it's fun. We're still not started yet, actually. We started 6:30, right? And this is a full class, at least the last time I checked. So we should probably have at least a few others. And usually the first class is pretty full until people get the idea, hey, you don't have to go. So it gets a little bit fewer people. But I mean, you are paying the money, and my wife is getting it. You know. So you might as well come and enjoy the class. I do tell jokes. So that should be fun.
You speak a lot of languages, but do you know
I'm
any
very
manual
confused.
sign languages?
Pardon?
Do you know any manual sign languages?
Manual, you mean like American Sign Language? No, my son does. I was actually kind of disappointed initially that he took that instead of, you know, a speaking language, but I guess it worked out well.
What's he do?
Well, he's 40, so a little bit older than you. He got his civil engineering degree at UAA years ago, walked across the stage, and that week got a job making much more money than I ever. And he's still an engineer, but he also went on and got his BFA and then his MFA at Arizona State. So he actually taught at UAA for a couple semesters and got bored. He didn't like doing it, actually. So. But that's important because his email address is exactly the same as mine, except I have an S after my, letter W, so it's WSJAMISON. If you just send it to W Jamison, he gets it. So don't do that. Make sure you put the S in there. Otherwise he gets it. He always forwards it to me and say, hey Dad, this is probably for you. In fact, in my box at the admin building, I got a book, an advertisement for art supplies that is obviously for him. So they confuse us now. Probably not a good idea to have exactly the same name, except for the middle initial. And so on. What else? Okay.
Is this a trash can? Probably not, right?
Actually, I have to, at 6:30, Nick is going to come in and give us like some, but no, that's not a trash can, but the one rule I remember is we're not supposed to eat food in the room. Didn't tell anybody, but, we're not supposed to eat food.
Sorry.
So we eat it in the hallway?
You can eat it in the hallway, the tiled hallways, not this one. The rugs are what, they're verboten,
High schools.
Verboten.
verboten. Everybody knows verboten means forbidden, right?
Now we do.
No, yes? So I am confused about that. Languages confuse me. Plus, I came from Philly, so I talk like this if I want to. I don't have to talk like, other people. That's supposed to be funny too, because people in Philly don't really talk like that. Only if you watch Rocky or Rambo, I guess. He doesn't talk that way in Rambo, does he? Sylvester Stallone.
He doesn't talk much in Rainbow.
Well, his role model was Arnold, and Arnold, he Austrian, doesn't speak very well. Even as the governor of California, he didn't speak very clearly. But languages are fun. I'll get started, even though Nick is supposed to barge in and tell us the rules, I guess. So I'm Bill. You can call me anything you like except late for dinner. That's a joke too. Is Judith here? I don't see Judith. Gosh, I'm looking forward to meeting Judith. Okay, so this is actually me. And I even wore exactly the same outfit that my email icon has, just so you'd, hey, that's him. Why not? Plus I've got my Army retiree button on here that makes it look cool. Okay, so welcome to philosophy. That's Judith.
Oh.
Are you always recognized, Judith, when you walk in?
I am tonight.
Well, there you go. Pretty cool. Okay, so this is philosophy. Philosophy literally is two Greek words, if you've heard that before. Philia means love, but there's like four, if you're familiar with C.S. Lewis, the four loves, there's four different Greek words that are translated as love or something similar in English. Philia is love, but it's also friendship. So it means love in the sense that two friends are friends because they love the same things. Does that make sense? You kind of like walk hand in hand in life looking at things, and you enjoy one another's company as you experience things. So philia. Love in the sense that you like the subject, essentially. And Sophia, which is female, by the way, is wisdom. So love of wisdom. So it's not necessarily love of knowledge, but love of wisdom. So that's kind of an interesting difference too, as you can imagine. You can know lots of stuff, but absolutely be stupid when it comes to being wise, etc. There's a real clue, I think. We know today that if you're talking with someone who is wise, they usually have convoluted grammar. When get as old, you will not, etc. I'm thinking of yogurt. I mean Yoda. Right? He's kind of the icon of wisdom. Although, if you analyze those Star Wars movies, he's a pretty dumb wise guy. Makes a lot of stupid remarks. Luke, I'm looking for someone. Ha! Looking for someone? Found someone you have, I think. Ha 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 ha. Yes? No? Are those movies before your time? Yes?
Yeah, but of course we watched them.
You can still watch them. That's kind of neat. Yeah. So philosophy, love of wisdom. But that's not really all it is. I mean, in a sense, it strikes me as kind of a history of thought, or a love of thought, because we go back all the way as far as we can. We could even talk about the Egyptians. I love the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I believe there's the description of God as God of God, light of light, true God of true God, which, if you're a Roman Catholic, you know that's part of the Nicene Creed. So that's stuck with us for more than 2,000 years BC, right? So that's kind of impressive. But it also continues today. You know, in the book, the text that we have, there's a list of philosophers from 1900, and it's totally incomplete. You know, so I have a list of philosophers. Welcome, Nick. Interrupt.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting. Hi, I'm Nick. I work for UAA. Some of you have already heard this spiel, so I'll make it quick. First of all, welcome to ERHS. We are very excited to have you here. But since we are using ASD's facility, they have a couple of requests for us. The first request is some of you may have parked up front. They would like us to park in the back parking lot. You get to the back parking lot by taking the third exit on the right, or taking the exit that doesn't have a giant Eagle River High School stone sculpture outside. The second request is that they have asked that we don't eat or drink anything that has carpet on the floor, or on any areas that have carpet on the floor. If you do want to eat, we ask that you take it out to the main atrium, which most of you have walked through. Basically, rule of thumb is if there's carpet, don't eat on it. If you do spill something, let Professor Jameson know immediately, and he'll go grab our nighttime monitor so we can clean it up. Water is completely fine, of course. So yeah, the third request is that we stay on our side of the building. There are, down this hallway on the right-hand side is the women's restroom. On the exact opposite side of that, on the hallway over on the right, is the men's restroom. They've asked that we use those ones. If those are full and you really need to go, use the bathrooms in the main atrium. We're just trying to mitigate how much exposure our students have with high school students. For those of you who are wondering about Wi-Fi, we're still working on that. ASD is very stingy with who gets the Wi-Fi passwords. Right now, only Professor Jameson and I are privy to that information. We're hoping next week we'll be able to give that out to you, or have a hotspot here that you can connect to. But for the meantime, we will have to make do without Wi-Fi. Are there any questions before I go? No? All right. Have a great class period.
Thank you, Nick. So.
Is that your name or?
Yes, most people do, and that's okay. You know, in fact, if I say Jamison, they look at me and they say, "You mean Jameson?" Oh, yeah, that's yeah. That happens. Even my one son came to me and said, "Dad, it really is Jameson." You know, 'cause everyone calls him that. So, and he's stupid. You know, so it's not his fault though. He has fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and that's a real thing. However, but he's made it to 37, and he's only been in jail a few times. So that's life. It's, you know, kind of fun. We adopted Christopher. Actually, we adopted all 4 of our kids because we couldn't figure out how to make them ourselves. It's actually harder than, you know, they say. At least for some people. I don't know. Okay, so philosophy. Actually, I don't have a paper syllabus to hand out. I haven't used paper since '95. So that's kind of cool, right? I like trees. I grow trees. Except when they get spruce bark beetles, and then I have to cut them down. So that's terrible. Okay, but I don't give out a paper copy of the syllabus, but you can go to my website, obviously. This is the main page. Notice it's the same as my email, except it doesn't have an @ sign, and it has a .uaa.alaska.edu. If you go to it. You could go to it through Blackboard, of course, and click on the syllabus there, or that takes you directly to the syllabus, but this is my main page. notice I have a link to the university, Alaska Middle College, if you're familiar with that. The Department of Philosophy, I love pointing out we've got brilliant people in the Department of Philosophy. Not all of them are like me. Some of them are brilliant and young, about your age actually, a lot of them. I'm the old guy that's just, that's been here the longest, so that's kind of fun. But you're welcome to take a look at our stuff. I do have an office in the Admin and Humanities building, the main campus. It's room 277. I'm hardly ever there though. I don't like to pay for parking, so that's one of the main reasons. And I live in Eagle River. I live just right over near Homestead Elementary, if you're familiar with. So if we do want to get together, I'm thinking maybe Jitters, although it can't be Wednesday night because I already have a group discussion on Wednesday nights that I've been in for over 20 years, so I don't want to get a lot of really close friends now, so I don't want to give that up. But we can meet at Jitters if you want to chat, or email. You could call me. You could even Skype, although I don't think Skype, officially Skyping works, but on Facebook, if you friend me, you could video chat on that. But always make sure before you click video chat that you let me know you're going to do it so that I make sure I get my clothes on. I'm just kidding. That was a joke. I have a lot of other people in the house, so I always wear clothes. So that's. By the way, I don't use trigger warnings. In fact, that's the only trigger warning I have, is that I don't use trigger warnings. Is that okay? Yes. All right. So, but we can meet if you like. I don't have posted office hours, but if you would like to chat, we could do Jitters, I think, or somewhere else, if you would like. But the syllabus is here. So this is the only class I'm doing this semester. I feel like I'm really retired now. But that was because of the budget thing and everything else. So hopefully by next semester I'll have 2 classes again. So that should be fun. So there's a theme to the course for all the Intro to Philosophy courses. And you could read that. Introduces works of influential thinkers, ancient, modern, Western philosophical tradition, but we do talk a little bit about the Eastern when it's appropriate. We emphasize central problems of knowledge, reality, good and evil, things like that. The really big issues, really. If you've never had philosophy before, here's an example of what sort of thing you can expect.
Leg of this exciting fight. And here come the Germans now, led by their skipper, Nobby Hagel. They must surely start favourites this afternoon. They've certainly attracted the most attention from the press with their team problems. And let's now see their lineup. The Germans playing 4-2-4, Leibniz in goal, back 4, Kant, Hegel, Schopenhauer and Schelling, front runners Schlegel, Wittgenstein, Nietzsche and Heidegger, and the midfield duo of Beckenbauer and Jaspers. Beckenbauer obviously a bit of a surprise there. And here come the Greeks, led out by their veteran centre-half, Heraclitus. Let's look at their team. As you'd expect, it's a much more defensive lineup. Plato's in goal, Socrates a front runner there, and Aristotle as sweeper. Aristotle very much the man in form. One surprise is the inclusion of Archimedes. Well, here comes the referee, Kung Fu Tzu, Confucius and his 2 linesmen, St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas. And as the 2 skippers come together to shake hands, we're ready for the start of this very exciting final. The referee, Mr. Confucius, checks his sand, and they're off. Nietzsche and Hegel there. Carl
This
Janssen
is
on the
hilarious,
outside,
by the way.
Wittgenstein there with him.
Busby.
There's Beckenbauer. Schelling's in there, Heidegger covering. Schopenhauer. And now it's the Greeks, Epicurus, Plotinus number 6. Aristotle. Empedocles of Archaigus and Democritus with him. There's Archimedes. Socrates, there he is, Socrates. Socrates,
This is soccer, right?
There's the ball, there's the ball. We'll be bringing you back to this exciting contest the moment anything interesting happens.
Get the idea.
Well, there may be no score, but there's certainly no lack of excitement here. As you can see, Nietzsche has just been booked for arguing with the referee. He accused Confucius of having no free will, and Confucius, he say, name go in book. And this is Nietzsche's third booking in 4 games. And that is Karl Marx. Karl Marx is warming up. It looks as though there's going to be a substitution on the German side. Obviously, manager Martin Luther has decided on all-out attack, and indeed he must with only 2 minutes of the match to go. And the big question is, who is he going to replace? Who's going to come off? It could be Jaspers, Hegel, or Schopenhauer. But it's Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein was Artie only last week. And here's Marx. Let's see if he can put some life into this German attack. Evidently not. What is it? Well now, with just over a minute left, the replay on Tuesday looks absolutely vital. And there's Archimedes. And I think he's had an idea. Eureka! Archimedes out Socrates. Socrates back to Archimedes. Archimedes out to Heraclitus. He beats Hegel. Heraclitus, a little flick. Here he comes on the far post. Socrates is there. Socrates, here he is. Socrates has scored. The Greeks are going mad. The Greeks are going mad. Socrates scores. But beautiful cross from Archimedes. The Germans are disputing it. Hegel is arguing that the reality is merely an a priori adjunct of non-naturalistic ethics. Kant, by the categorical imperative, is holding that ontologically exists only in imagination, and Marx is claiming it was offside. But Confucius laughs them with a final whistle. It's all over. Germany, having trounced England's famous midfield trio, Bentham, Long and Hobbs in the semi-final, have been beaten by the odd goal. And let's see it again. There it is. Socrates. Socrates heads in and Leibniz doesn't have a chance. And just look at those delighted Greeks. There they are, Chopper, Sophocles, Empedocles of Astragas. What a game he had. And Epicurus was there, and Socrates, the captain, who scored what was probably the most important goal of his career.
Hollywood is being rebuilt by artists not afraid to disrupt the status quo, telling fresh stories.
So, as you can see, philosophy is only concerned with the really important things, not like kicking a ball around, usually. That could be funny. That's the Monty Python, by the way. You're familiar? How many folks have never seen any Monty Python sketches before? Well, that's the first. They're a bunch of philosophy majors, so they do weird stuff. Okay. But so we'll look at the really big problems: knowledge, problem of reality, good and evil, etc. It's also mandatory for us to have a list of student outcomes, so you're welcome to look at these. I just totally made them up, but nonetheless, there they are. Text is Journey into Philosophy. By the way, the very first assignment that I have listed, I've got the wrong page number. It's not on page 21, it's on, what is it,
531.
531. It is in the book. I do not know how I managed to do that. How many folks would like an A for the course? Most of you, okay. That's easily done because I'm allowed to give everybody an A. It's not like Princeton, where I'm only allowed to give 5% A's or something, you know, and everybody else has to get a B or a C. Most people get C's, which is what, you know, that makes it an average C, right? We don't have to do that. I can give everybody A's, but I do, of course, expect you to actually show up for class. I expect you to take exams. I have 3 exams, which are 50% of the grade, and they're already posted. So you could just already look and see what they're like. You could probably already write responses to these questions already, but please wait until we actually cover material, and who knows, maybe your point of view will change, right?
Sorry to interrupt again. Is there a Callista Lee in here?
Yeah.
So you can probably already, so some of them, how do we know anything? You probably have your own thoughts about how you know anything, but we'll be talking about that. So if you send me stuff already, that will be fine, but you might want to add more later, or whatever. I mean, kind of be disappointing if you get an A within the first week or two and you still have the rest of the semester to go. So please come and think about the issues, etc. And I grade you on the number of words you send me, so you don't have to worry about being right. In fact, a lot of these questions, there's no real right answer, right? These are opinion questions. And when I was talking to some of you earlier, my earlier career was as a linguist for the Army, and so I like the language model of learning, and I think of all learning as essentially language learning. We're learning vocabulary, whether it's nursing, you're learning the vocabulary of being a nurse. You're learning the vocabulary of being a lawyer if you're studying law, right? And the best are usually the most fluent, I think. So if you want the best lawyer, you'll notice he, she, or it tends to be among the best in knowing their material, even their specialty, etc. Right? So in a way, I think what we're doing in this class is learning the peculiar vocabulary associated with philosophy. And so by reading the materials, by coming to class, or watching the videos, or watching the associated videos that I've got on YouTube, they are just, today the internet has everything. When I was in school, the library was the place to go, and if the library didn't have it, we were pretty well stuck, right? Today, if you've got connection to the internet, everything that humans know is pretty much available to you. And that's just absolutely incredible, overwhelming. In fact, it changes the whole point of trying to go to school and learning, because your goal now is not to learn as much as you can in a particular field, because there's too much. You're not going to be able to retain all of that, or even spend the time learning all of that. Instead, what you've got to have is a sense of what's important, right? What's important for us to be concerned about, and in a lot of ways, what a lot of people, I think, have already learned to do is to use Google for the information, rather than trying to retain it yourself. You just click on Google and look it up when you need it. But there is an interesting dilemma that's hit us too, and that's the Flynn effect. I don't know if I would be, let me see if I could look up James Flynn. I'm not sure how much. Maybe there, he's there. I'm just going to click on it. It's about 15 minutes, so I won't play the whole thing. What is this?
We're going to take a quick voyage over the cognitive history of the 20th century, because during that century our minds have altered dramatically. As you all know, the cars that people drove in 1900 have altered because the roads are better and because of technology. And our minds have altered too. We've gone from people who confronted a concrete world and analyzed that world primarily in terms of how much it would benefit them, to people who confront a very complex world.
Okay. Just so look up James Flynn TED Talk, and he talks about the Flynn effect. He's got several books also there. It's called the Flynn effect not because he named it after himself, but Charles Murray wrote a book on IQ and referred to results that James Flynn had discovered, and that is that with each cohort, the IQs tend to go up. So I could, based on that study, assuming that it would continue, I could suppose that your IQ is much higher than mine because of the number of cohorts that have gone in between you and me. Welcome.
How you doing?
So, and of course we could argue over why on earth that would be the case, right? And how we even know it. And so for that, listen to what he says, on that video. But even though your IQs have gone up, the amount of things you know has gone down. And the reason, again, is hypothetical, and that's you're reading less. And as a result of that, and our way of getting information into our heads is still especially a matter of reading, how much reading you do. So for those of you that read a lot, that's great, assuming you also are doing the things that enables your generation, your cohort, to be smarter. You have a faster running Pentium chip in your brain, or whatever you want to call it, right? I have my own suspicions that it's partly that if you go back to the 1900s, they didn't have any communications devices like we do. The farmers would be out in the fields all week except for Sunday afternoon or morning when they would be in a communal situation. So the only intercommunication they would have would be that time where they're socially face-to-face. But if you've ever noticed people walking around or even driving, they're always engaged in the social world, through the media, right? And so if you think about it, you're listening to music, you're in conversation, all those different things are exercising this muscle. So if you think about it, what makes your muscle smarter is using it, and you're using it today way more than it's ever been used before, thanks to all of our modern devices. But here's the thing, you can have the smartest computer sitting there, right? But if it doesn't have any data, it's not going to be able to solve any problems. So the problem is, how do we get young people to read as well as use all these devices and stay engaged, especially since they're so distracting. It's very difficult, to keep your focus on it. I remember once my youngest daughter came to me while I was sitting there at the table reading, and I had been reading all evening, and she came by me at one point and looked at me frustrated. She said, "Dad, how do you do that?" Just sitting there reading all evening. How on earth do you do that? I had a student once in class. I showed a video of Jared Diamond talking about his book Collapse. It was about an hour lecture. And the student was absolutely impressed. He says, "I'm going to read that book." And the next week, he came into class and he looked so startled. He had gotten the book and he started to read it, and he had gotten up to page 3. And he looked at me and he said, "How do you read a book?" Because he had not worked his way up to an 800-page nonfiction book about, what makes societies collapse, right? If you're literate, you could read. If you're used to 48 characters and that's it, you're not going to be able to read a technical work that takes hours of concentration. And it hurts, because you're actually, it's just like if you sat down and decide, okay, I haven't done any push-ups for thousands of years, but I'm going to do 60 right now. And you sit down and you start trying, and you're going to discover, wait a minute, you can't do 60 without having done some, at least within the last couple of 100 years, right? So same thing with our brain. If you're not exercising the brain, you're not going to be able to do that kind of work. And by the way, I think what boredom is when you've run out of protein. Your brain uses an awful lot of protein. Your eyes and your brain use more protein. By the way, it's kind of interesting. When you compare us to other animals, you discover that one of the main differences are mitochondria are uniquely different, and they allow us to use a lot more energy than any of the other animals that we know of. And it's our brains that are especially using energy. So in a sense, it's possible that the reason we can do so much with our minds is because not of our development, but because of the mitochondria that are not really us, that are part of ourselves. So that's kind of intriguing to think that way. And by the way, there's the mitochondrial Eve. Have you ever heard of her? Yes, mitochondrial Eve. She's the so-called, of course, Eve that would have been the mother of all of us, because we all have her mitochondria, and it comes from the female line, right? So, pretty interesting stuff. Okay. So, other things that are important, by the way, is oxygenating your brain, which means exercise, basically, and not breathing smoke. So this is not a good thing. It's been bad for us the last couple of weeks. And I, as much as I think Chinese people are fantastic, I don't want to go live in Beijing because they look like this all the time, from what I understand. Another thing, of course, eating protein, but I don't mean to suggest that you shouldn't be a vegan if you think that's important. But at the same time, there's a reason I think that we're at the top of the food chain. Remember, by the way, if you go to Hawaii and you go into the ocean, enter the ocean, you enter the food chain. Right? But if you think about it, eating meat is probably one of the things that made us human. That's a book, by the way. A lot of the things I say are from books, because I'm addicted to reading. Avoiding pollutants, not just smoke, but other kinds of pollutants, like chemical pollutants. So marijuana, I think, is a bad deal. Sorry, I know it's legal, but I don't recommend it. I actually had a clearance. I don't think you would get a clearance in the military if you were using those kinds of drugs. In fact, I had colleagues that were kicked out. I don't think they were called colleagues at the time. But if they were using anything of that sort, that's verboten, etc. I'm sure there's other things. Plus, making sure you get plenty of interesting things to do. I mean, like play. The reason the kids need to play is pretty obvious, right? They learn a lot, but also they should be encouraged with lots of talk. So the mothers that talk with their children constantly are teaching their children vocabulary, and they've done measurements. Women that basically just yell nasty things to their kids and smack them every once in a while, that kid is not going to be able to be very competitive compared to a kid that has a much higher vocabulary because the mother talked with them all the time, right? So, that kind of richness. Another interesting thing is homes that have a lot of books tend to have kids that have better achievement in school. I mean, when you think, what all the things that the parents do, it might not even be the things the parents do. It might be just the presence of having books in the house that's significant that way. Okay. But I'm mostly interested in vocabulary, so sending me lots of words, because I figured that's how you're going to improve your knowledge of philosophy, is by reading, by talking, going to debates and things of that sort. All of that stuff obviously helps. It's immersion. It's linguistic immersion into these subjects. If you think about it, that's how you get better and better at those subjects. Right? Also have as 25% a term project, and that's, again, just writing on a particular topic. And in this case, I'd like you to select a philosopher who's alive primarily, although some that are recently dead are okay. Some of the ones on my list are almost dead. They're not completely dead. So Pope Benedict, for example, the 16th, he's still alive, retired, but he's still alive. You definitely pick him. And in fact, if you have a favorite philosopher that's not on my list, you can ask me, although Ayn Rand, not a good choice. Definitely not a fan. But in any case, are you a fan of Ayn Rand? Our current president theoretically is. Well, I don't want to get into that. And as far as I'm concerned, I'll refer to him as he who must not be named, if that's. And that's because in my own discussion group, every time you mention his name, you have to put $1 in the bucket. And that's. Oddly, if you mention a singer, and I can't remember the name of the singer, and that's good because whenever you mention the singer, you have to put $2 in the. So that's interesting. But so these are philosophers that I think are well. And notice I have links so that hopefully you can go and see what they're like if you're not familiar with them. Some I didn't look up lists. Or links. Some are dead. Umberto Eco recently died. Peter Berger, real big fan of Peter Berger and others. So what's the paper look like, though? 3,000 words of whatever you want to say about that person. What you find interesting about their life, what they said. Obviously, the more you read of their work, the better. I think you'll find them all interesting. Some are harder than others. Peter Sloterdijk is very interesting, but he's also very difficult. Thomas Metzinger, he's absolutely fascinating. His main work is Being No One, because if you're trying to figure out what does it mean to be a person, his point of view is to argue that there is no persistent self. That's you over time. I mean, granted, if you tried to write the IRS and said, and say, hey, I'm not the same person that, made all this money. I'm a different person now, right? The IRS is not going to allow that, because they're going to go by the number, your Social Security number, right? You're still the same person that has that Social Security number. But when you think about it, you're not the same person you were yesterday. Something in you is changing from moment to moment, right? So what do we mean that we have a persistent self? And his philosophy is being no one. I think the impression of some of his work. It's on YouTube as well, so that's kind of interesting. So the term paper, please do not plagiarize. That's, I think, important. But it is also confusing because what is plagiarism? If you like, I have my own little, I'd say, what is plagiarism? And I stole that that definition from the Microsoft dictionary or encyclopedia. It's gone now, so that link no longer works as far as I know. But the idea, of course, is taking someone else's work and submitting it as your own is the basic view we have of plagiarism. But so we have specific things that we do, obviously. If you've written essays before, you put quotations around the words that you're taking from someone else. Although I love this particular line, the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. And that's from Ecclesiastes. And what's funny is she must have stolen that from somebody, the author, or she was wrong, right? If you think about it. Because if she was right, there's nothing new under the sun, then where did she steal that line from, right? But if she was wrong, and she was writing that for the first time, so that's kind of interesting. We can also quote at length, and the reason I took this particular quote is because it includes that quotation, and notice that he doesn't use quotes around that one. He assumes that that's common knowledge, that expression, there's nothing new under the sun. And I think that's right. And so normally, if we're saying something that everybody knows, it's not something you have to quote or establish the footnote for, right? Where did it come from? Because it's common knowledge, right? That's, I think, pretty fair. What about when we use our own words to summarize something? Well, in that case, you could certainly use your own words, but you should still give a footnote to the source where you got the idea for it. Does that make sense? Yes? I think part of that was people, especially Americans, are very proud of their own work and don't want to feel like they're sharing their success with others necessarily, right? And I think that's actually wrong. We should be proud of the fact that we've done this research and that we've got all of these ideas from all of these different folks. The issue of plagiarism gets even more complex. Have you ever heard of Ringworks? Does this work? Not sure if this one will work. Ah, okay. So this is the Dialectizer. Have you ever heard of it? So you can go on the web and you can put in a particular web page from a, obviously any site, and then you can come to the dialect and you can select redneck, jive, cockney, Elmer Fudd, right? Swedish chef, bork, right? All those. Say moron, you can pick any of these and say dialectize, and the text will be translated into that dialect. And that's pretty hilarious. Notice you could also just type it into the other window and it'll automatically dialectize whatever you do there. So for example, I took this paragraph that I wrote here, but you might ask if all my ideas come from someone else and I'm just mixing them up, etc., etc. I ran that through Redneck, and it came out, but you might ask, effing all my ideas come from someone else, and I was just mixing them up into my ideas. That's fun. That's hilarious. You could do experiments with that, and it's just kind of cool. Now, if you took someone else's work and you ran it through Redneck and then submitted it as your term paper, is that your work or is that plagiarism? Still plagiarism. You did something with it, you transformed it a little bit, but it's still not your work, right? Well, how about if you visit this page? Let's see if this works. It might not. Oh, it did. Okay. So this is the postmodern generator. And what happens is that you click on this site and it gives you a term paper, complete with the title, an author. You could always change that, right? You could erase that author, put your name in. And Notice it's folk cultist, power relations, and cultural whatever. Culture is meaningless, says Marx. However, according to Werther, it is not so much culture that is meaningless, but rather the collapse and subsequent Rubicon of culture, etc. So you get a whole term paper, including footnotes and resources, right? So that's pretty cool. But I mean, if you submitted that as your term paper for your course, you'd think, well, that's plagiarism, right? And the teacher could immediately find where that's from, right? Well, the actual problem that teacher would have finding it is that it's not anywhere on the internet, because if you click refresh on this page, notice that one is gone, and you have a completely different term paper. If you click again, different one. Every single time you go to this site, from what I understand, it's a completely different term paper, no repeats. So no one will be able to go back to that and say, aha, you stole that from here, because there's no source that will match. So would using that be plagiarism? Yes. I'm just setting you up for this, right? What if you took one of those papers, and I did Foucaultist Power Relations in the Neo-Textual Paradigm of Discourse, and I ran that one through Redneck. And so now I have Foucaultist Power Relations and the Neo-Textual Paradigm of Discourse in the works of Fellini. The predominant concept is the distinction, etc. Now this is brand new stuff, right? Brand new. Actually, if you look this up, you would find it right here on this page, because this is actually a pretty stable page, right? It's been there for years since I had fun doing this, right? But now it's harder, because now it's completely transformed. It's from originally a generator. And by the way, machines are going to be writing a lot more stuff. They already are. A lot of the jobs of people, writing, are being replaced by AI, basically, right? Where the machines keep track of the data, and they just write the summaries and send it off to all the relevant folks, and everybody gets their updated information, and it's all done just for the price of the software, etc. No one actually has to do the job. So more people are going to lose their jobs as more computer writing occurs, right? By the way, there was kind of an interesting article, and I know this was happening for years, really, is teachers have software that they could download, run essays through it to practice grading them, and then when they get their essays from their students, they just automatically run through and get graded without the teacher having to do the work. So that's kind of interesting, right? I think eventually, it's just all the computers are doing everything, and we're just showing up and on Soma or something, right? Nobody knows what Soma is? Brave New World. That's the drug in Brave New World. No, okay. So, all right. So my question to you is this still plagiarism? And the answer is
Yes.
yes. There's something wrong with it, right? By the way, I think it's a real issue. Anybody who's heard of Harry Potter?
Yeah.
2 or 3 of you? Okay. J.K. Rowling, Lady Rowling, right, is one of the wealthiest women in the world, and everyone knows that she started out as not one of the wealthiest women in the world, but sitting in a cafe with her baby, writing this novel, inspired by a tombstone in the cemetery right across the street from the cafe, right? Tom Riddle, is actually there, right? Yes?
I didn't know that.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
And of course, that book became Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, which they changed for the American audience to the Sorcerer's Stone because no one would buy a book with the word philosopher in it. So they changed it. But as you know, that not only ended with her being a billionaire, but now there's a follow-up series, The Crimes of Grindelwald, right? So she's still writing, making money, etc. But she was sued for plagiarism. And in fact, it looked like a pretty darn good case, because some of the things that she used in her book were from previous authors and so on. I think there was even... Well, I'm not going to find it, I guess. Looks like a whole another series. But there was another movie from the 80s that was almost just like Hogwarts, which actually I know some people were familiar with. So that's kind of interesting. But so she was sued, but won. Yes? Are you familiar
I
with it?
know what movie you're talking about, yeah. It's like a little girl and she goes off to become a witch or something.
Mm-hmm. They even have competition. Yeah, no,
It's called, I think it's called The Good Little Witch, I think it's called.
Good Little Witch?
Good Little Witch or something. There's a famous singer in that movie too, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And he plays like the headmaster or something.
Yeah, really
I know what you're
goofy
talking about.
character. But
Not that I'm older.
so this is really not unique. And plus, there's also the fact that J.K. Rowling had a double first from Cambridge, where she got a first in French and in classics. And an awful lot of the stories are from those classics. So the three-headed dog is Cerberus, if you're familiar with that story. Albus Dumbledore is white, bumblebee, basically. Rubius Hagrid is red, and Sirius Black is black. And if you look at the alchemist story, you mix black, white, and red together with lead, and it turns it into gold. So it's the alchemist story. And by the way, by book 7, as Harry defeats Voldemort, he who must not be named, right? The sun's supposed to be rising, and the whole scene is supposed to turn gold, because that's the point where Harry has been turned from the lead of the metaphorical, unrefined child to the gold of the hero at the end, right? So there's elements of the classic stories, and that's just one of them. There's actually lots that she's put together. So it's actually a very traditional collection of stories. So in other words, she is plagiarizing. She's plagiarizing all these different groups. But the judge considered her not plagiarizing, so she didn't have to pay a part of her money to the other authors and so on. And so, you look at this, how do you decide that? It's obviously a oleo, or a mixture of all of these elements, and yet at the same time we think of it as unique, relatively unique. Well, I suspect that virtually all of our contemporary entertainment is that way. Music, you listen to music and you probably hear elements of things. I was listening just today to Rossini's overture of The Thieving Magpie. And as I was listening to that, I was hearing elements of his overture to the William Tell overture, right? It's typical Rossini, same pattern. But Rossini gets this from a previous set of composers who've taught Rossini, etc., right? So you find a chain. You can find these individuals learn from these and these and these, and there's a chain of elements that you can tell where it comes from, right? So if you're writing, and you're writing your essays and term paper, is it going to be totally unique? No. You're going to be putting stuff together and using other resources. So name the resources, etc. Right? That's wonderful. By the way, everything I say is not my idea. I'm quoting all sorts of other people. Right? So I don't think any of my ideas are uniquely mine, but they're a hodgepodge, a mishmash from all the things that I've heard before. But at least I do my best to try to indicate where the ideas come from. Hopefully, right? So you do the same, right? Give me what's exciting to you, what you feel like saying. Remember, you can't be wrong. These are your opinions. So if you're hesitant to write, don't be. This will be fun, right? Because you can write what you really think about these subjects and get an A. That's cool. It's a term paper. I will also ask quiz questions every night. And you can answer those by emailing me. And there'll be 2 sets of questions each evening because we're in a sense, because we're meeting just once, so this is really a double class. Right? My first quiz question, so you might want to remember this one, should be fun. What are the 10 Commandments? Don't cheat and look at the neighbor. That could have been funny too, right? And when you get home, email me what you thought, and I'm interested in how many you got right, and if you're familiar with them from before. So what I've had happen is a lot of people had memorized them when they were kids. In fact, I had one lady who was in tears in the back of the room and said, I used to teach Sunday school. And she couldn't remember them. So it's kind of embarrassing. But what are the 10 Commandments? Some people will say, I've never studied the 10 Commandments, so I don't know. You might ask, well, if you're from a different religious perspective than, say, the Jewish or Christian or Islamic perspective, what do you think they are? Some might not have commandments. I know the Dalai Lama says we don't actually have commandments. We just try to think positive, right, about doing things. But what are they? And here's the interesting thing to me, is if you remembered memorizing them when you were younger, but can't remember them today, and maybe remember 5, maybe 6, you're puzzled. And then I tell you what the remainder were, you'll go, oh yeah. You'll remember them. In other words, they're in your head. But you can't pull them up on the spur of the moment. There's something that needs to trigger it so that you're able to pull it up. And I think part of the reason that this is a problem for us is because this is not narrative thinking. It's instead maybe what we would call technical thinking or technical writing. Because you just have a list of things with nothing that leads one thing to the next, right? So, for example, if I asked you, how did Mufasa die? How did Mufasa die? And can you picture the whole scene? You can, right? No problem. Everybody can? If you've seen it, yes? You can even remember the music. Dun, 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 with the wildebeest, and of course poor Simba is sitting on the other side, can't actually see what's happening, but he sees his father fall, etc. So Darth Vader dies. Mufasa dies. All right. Same actor, but
It's plagiarized thing, right?
get them confused.
Same story.
So what killed Mufasa? Scar?
Betrayal.
Betrayal? I think Mufasa died because he didn't move Fasa. It's kind of an interesting thing. The name, is often very much the topic. Like when we talk about Plato, the Apology, when we look at the Apology, Apollo is the guy that Socrates blamed for all the trouble he was in. But still today we refer to an apology as something we give to somebody when we explain the reason for why something happened. And Apollo is the god of reason, among other things, right? So that's kind of interesting. So in the dialogue, the Apology, Apollo is a character. He's the one that Socrates is blaming for this demon that he has to constantly want to ask people questions, right? To find out if they're wiser than he is, etc. So that's kind of interesting. Meno, when we talk about the Meno, Meno is I look at the word, it seems to mean unchanging. Right? So can virtue be taught? And Meno is the character that argues no. You're born that way. You're born a nice person, or you're an asshole. Not a nice person, right? 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 And if you've had children, you know this is true. You get a good one, oh, you're so nice, and they grow up to be nice. And if they're a pain in the society, they continue to do that, even if they become president, right? So it's kind of interesting. Euthyphro, we'll talk a little bit about. Euthyphro, EU is the preface, the beginning of the word. Prefix. And it means good. So like euthanasia, or whatever, so Theo is God, and Phro is phronesis. So good God analysis, basically. So Euthyphro is a priest. He's a specialist and knows all these things about, God, the gods. And of course, Socrates is in trouble for not being pious. And so he's going to be on trial, and we all know that he loses. They find him not pious, and they kill him, right? Famously. Well, he's standing in line waiting for his trial next to Euthyphro, who is a good God analysis specialist. And well, you ought to know what piety is. While we're waiting, why don't you teach me what pious is, so that when I go in, I can say, I'm getting lessons from someone who knows. So even though I'm an old, stupid guy and I've been doing the wrong thing, I'm at least going to improve, and I won't be doing impious things anymore because I'm going to learn from Euthyphro. So you can help me out. And Euthyphro, sure, I'll help. Right? So the first thing Socrates asks, same kind of definitional thing that he asks constantly, is, what is pious? What is being pious? And Euthyphro says, doing what the gods love is being pious. But remember, there are plural gods in the polytheistic Greek pantheon, right? All the gods, right? And so it's pretty easy for Socrates to point out that there are some gods that like some things and other gods that like other things. I don't know if this will work. I'll look. I it seems like every artist that's important, or even not important, has to come up with a particular depiction of Zeus as a swan, having an affair with Leda. So that's kind of famous. So Zeus, obviously, the god that loves messing around, right? Hera, his wife, is in charge of matrimony. You sense a conflict here? Obviously. So what Zeus thinks is important for a guy is that he's pretty, well, you can figure that out for yourself. What Hera, on the other hand, thinks is important is always yelling at him for doing what he likes to do. So Socrates makes the point easily that it looks like if I'm pious, as far as Zeus is concerned, I'm in trouble with another god, Hera, and if I'm pious according to Hera, I'm in trouble with Zeus. So how does this work? And of course Euthyphro is stuck. So Socrates helps by asking a clarification question, right? And he says, is the pious pious because the gods love it? Or do the gods love the pious because it's pious? Should I do that one again?
Please.
Okay. So, do the gods love the pious? I reversed it. Do the gods love the pious because it's pious? Right? Or is the pious pious because the gods love it?
Arguing causality.
Now, what causes the pious to be pious? The gods loving it? Or is there something about the pious that makes it just great? You know? So, as a more contemporary example, I love this one. Imagine Jesus comes to your door. Knock, knock, knock. You open the door, and for the sake of argument, you recognize that it's Jesus. You have absolutely no doubt. And you know that he is God. No doubt, right? And Jesus says to you, sell everything you have, give the money to the poor, and then come follow me. It's God telling you to sell everything you have, give the money to the poor, and come follow me. Do you go with him? No questions asked? Or do you argue? What would you do? And by the way, that's my second quiz question. Is that fair?
Could you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, Jesus comes to your door. You answer the door. You know it's Jesus. So I'm taking away that as a possibility to say, hey, you know, it could be a homeless dude. You know, I'm not going to listen to any homeless dude, right? And you know he's God. I realize, you know, you might not believe in God, et cetera, but hypothetically, this is God. And do you see that this is almost exactly the same question that Socrates is asking, right? Because Jesus is going to say to you, sell everything you have, give the money to the poor, and come follow me, right? In other words, poverty, austerity, kind of like Dunleavy wants Alaska to be. Right? Or do you argue with him? And so here's the interesting question. Is that kind of an aesthetic life intrinsically the best kind of life that human beings can live? I obviously haven't accepted that myself. I had the choice. I was raised Roman Catholic. I went to elementary school with nuns who had all made that choice. Immaculate Heart of Mary, nuns. They were all taken vows of poverty. They had nothing that they owned. Then I went to high school with Augustinians, who, by the way, were all philosophy majors. It's kind of interesting. And they had all taken the vow of poverty, living together in a commune, basically, right? Supported by the community. Teaching. So, I mean, when I see teachers arguing, well, if you don't pay us enough, you won't get the good teachers. I think, wait a minute. When I was in school, we had some absolutely fantastic teachers. We had other horrible teachers, and we had a lot of, I guess, mediocre teachers. And none of them got paid anything. So the quality of teaching doesn't really depend, I think, on how much money the teachers make. I mean, there could be other issues associated with that, certainly. But so Jesus is asking everyone to live the aesthetic life. Is it intrinsically a better kind of life? Or is Jesus just really fond of that one? I mean, after all, that was the kind of life he led. In which case, you might feel, oh, okay, Jesus, not my thing. I've had, of course, students say, well, what about the baby? If you're a mother, and you've got all this, especially as an American mother, how many things do you have for that child? More than you can fit in a Cadillac, right? Because you've got the safety seat, you've got the stroller, you've got all the various baby changing things and the toys and the, St. Bernard to help protect the child, and all of that stuff has to come, right? So if you see women walking in the Freddies, they've got the baby in the carrier, they've got the bag to carry all the stuff for the baby, and now they have to bring their own bags, because on the 15th of September we have to bring our own bags, right? How are they going to shop? Can you imagine? Isn't that fun? I especially love seeing, like 3 or 4 kids, and she's like following a list. She's picking all the things she needs, and she's driving one of those great big carts that have the little plastic car in the front, and the kids are driving. That's absolutely amazing what women can do. It is. It's just amazing. But Jesus can't be talking to her. Sell everything you have. What, the kids? You can't sell the kids. It's illegal, right? Really, you can't sell them. You didn't know that? No. In this country.
You can sell anything.
That's true.
Whether or not it's flavors.
It's true.
Is he gonna keep me from going to jail? It's the big one.
Oh.
Well, and even if it does keep you from jail, are you going to get strangled to death while you're there? And, suicide watch. Because the cameras are broken and the guards are asleep. Sorry, Jeffrey Epstein. Okay. Well, so that's my second quiz question. What would you say? Would you argue with Jesus? But Socrates is asking a very serious question from Euthyphro. So if we go to the Apology, and by the way, all of the works of Plato are on this site, so you could go over here, for example, is the Apology, and this is obviously in alphabetical order, so if we want, we can go to the Euthyphro. So you can follow that there. But Euthyphro can't answer this question. I'm not sure that we can answer that question. We're still trying to answer that question. It's famous. It's considered a real stumper. Stumper? Is that a good word? You use stumper? Poser? We don't know the answer to that. Is it intuitively the case that we know what is good? Or do you listen to the priest? And the priest is obviously speaking for a particular religious point of view. Should you listen to the priest? How do they know any better than you yourself? Right? Why should you listen to them? Maybe you're the one that should figure out what you should do with your life. Good question. And look how old it is as a question. Because Socrates was killed in 399 BC. So how many years ago was that? 2019 is 399. That's 2418. Math major. Great. This is a fun question. So you get to answer those two questions. What are the 10 Commandments? And the main thing I'm looking for is, okay, you remember probably thou shalt not kill. In fact, I have my own collection here. Let's see if I can. Class notes, other items, favorite commandments. So these are some of the commandments. I used to collect them and add them to my site here. So these are favorites. They're not correct. Right? Thou shalt not covet thy wife. Thou shalt not worship idol gods. The idol gods are the ones that are lazy and don't do anything, right? Right? Thou shalt. Thou shalt not sleep with thy neighbor. Lincoln would have had trouble with that. You know, if you read about Lincoln. Thou shalt not convent the neighbor's wife.
That was a verb.
That was, you know, I really enjoyed these. Thou shalt not covet with another man's wife. That's kind of intriguing, whatever that would mean. Right? Don't kill the man. Thou shalt not accept no other gods above thyself. I really know where some of these come from. Do not steal. And the fun thing there, of course, is that's the metal instead of theft. Thou shalt not give a quiz on the first day of class. I love that one. Thou shalt harm thy neighbor. Don't forget the 10 Commandments. Right? You get the idea. Don't piss off the boss. Don't make golden cows. That one.
Don't speed on base.
Don't speed on base.
That's a good one.
This one. Don't covet Nabo's wife.
Well, he put that in the redneck.
Could be. Okay. Well, you get the idea. Always feed the dogs. Read before class. Especially if the teacher gets there early too, because then you can't read because he's going to tell jokes while you're sitting there. So that's kind of fun.
They spell Bane like Arm Bane?
Yes, that's another. Yeah, so some of these are pretty fun.
In your brain.
And by the way, if you're wondering where the tablets are, there's 2 of the 3. The third one broke. Nobody gets that joke. Okay, that's
is that Monty Python?
Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks. Yeah.
Mel Brooks. He's coming down with the 3 tablets and drops one.
The 10.
So I used to keep track of how many, and it became a very steady pattern. So I'm assuming you know, do not murder or do not kill, right? Do not steal, probably. Do not bear false witness or lie, right? Probably know that one. But then you start seeing a drop-off as it goes. Especially, no one seems to remember the ones associated with God, like keep holy the Sabbath. Very few people seem to remember that one, unless they've remembered all 10. No strange gods before me, etc. This is obviously not politically correct for some folks, so this whole discussion about what are the 10 Commandments, where are they from, etc., actually quite controversial. And I've got some links to things associated with that as well. I had a critique of this, etc. But my excuse, if it is an excuse, I actually like seeing your responses and getting a sense of which ones you remember, because it gives me a good sense of where you're coming from, actually. But it's a memory issue. If you studied them when you were younger, but then on the spot only could remember a few, why is that the case? Because I'm convinced that we remember everything that we ever experience. Everything, even the touch of your coat when you put it on, I think you remember. For example, what was the very first thing you did this morning when you woke up that you could tell us about?
I said good morning to my pet snake.
Pretty cool.
I do that every morning.
It's not Nagini, is it?
No, it's Tangy.
Tangy. That's pretty. Did you see the newer movies, The Crimes of Grindelwald? Nagini is in there. She's a character, yeah. Very interesting character too, actually. No, I think your mind literally absorbs every experience and logs it. But the problem we have when we're asked a question about, like, what's the first philosopher that comes into your mind, is there could be the case where you didn't actually have one, maybe, but it also could be that even though you remember a bunch of them, you don't think of one right at the moment. And the question, why is that the case? And then if I tell you, okay, so we had, thou shalt not kill, honor your mother and father, right? There's another one. Keep holy the Lord's Day. Thou shalt not curse, right? Not have any strange gods before God, right? Thou shalt not lie or bear false witness against your neighbor. You shouldn't covet your neighbor's goods, right, etc., right? So if we go through them, those are the ones I forgot. Well, that means you actually, of course, knew them, but you couldn't figure out in that moment which ones were the ones that you were forgetting, right? So that's kind of intriguing. So how can we fix that so that we can remember the things we need to? Well, the answer to that is Mufasa, narration. I have to tie things into a narrative as if we're remembering something because it fits in a story. We'll remember, just triggering the story. If I'm looking at my shoes and they're ruby slippers and I'm clicking my heels together, I'm Dorothy, and I'm thinking there's no place like home, right? So it's amazing how, so there's mnemonic, that's hard to say, devices that we could use in order to remember things. So that's pretty interesting. Okay. So let me get any questions. questions so far? Leave it.
Is there a word count for the quiz questions?
No, good question. You can write as much as you like.
Okay.
I'd be puzzled over why you might think, I remembered all 10. I have no trouble because I'm every Sunday in church and I'm the person that's reminding everybody that's against the commandment. Whatever, it could be, or not, so that would be interesting, what you think of this thesis. A lot of people I know disagree and feel that every night when you go through your rapid eye movement periods of sleep, that your brain is sifting through all the experiences and saying, oh, trash. Don't need that, Husband's name, nope, don't need that, all the stuff that you could throw out, right? Just so you can have that neat little packet of stuff. Aha, I can remember this.
So you're wanting us to list them, or just tell you how many of the 10 you will remember?
I would like to know which ones you remembered on the spot. That would be intriguing. Because there is a pattern. And I've learned that pattern because of people telling me what they remembered. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a free country. You don't...
But if we'd like the points, then we should.
Well, if you send me your quiz response, you get the points. So it's not like you have to win the points by giving me the right response. It's the same as the other, so any response is good for the quiz question. I measure them at the end of the semester. I take all of your emails, I put them on a flash drive, and I weigh them to see how heavy they were.
Do you want them emailed tonight, or do you have that?
Before next week. So there's no hurry. Before next week. Is that cool? So, you can email me as often as you like. By the way, I'm also on Facebook, so you're welcome to friend me if you like to. That's not really me. It's just my face. I took my face and put it on a guy that was sitting on the moose. I don't know who he is. But I have lots of students that I'm friends with. I used to be friends with Sarah Palin. I don't know what happened. She dropped me. I don't know. But I don't know what you think of Facebook. Did you ever see the movie The Circle with Tom Hanks?
Yeah.
He's the owner of a company called The Circle, and it's basically everything is going transparent. There's cameras all over the world, so everything is visible, and basically everybody can watch everybody else all the time. So there's no privacy anymore. Everything is open. And what's interesting is that's not really science fiction. That's happening. Just this morning there was an article about an Amazon company called Ring. You heard of it? So they have, I guess, a front doorbell ring button that is also a camera. And those videos can be they're triggered by movement, so all the video of your neighborhood, basically, whatever the camera can see, is uploadable, and the police can share it. So that if someone's in the neighborhood that's suspicious, everyone can share it and the police can see it right away. So of course, individuals that are stealing packages and stuff can be caught much quicker and so on. And that's growing phenomenally. I don't know if it's growing here, but it's nationwide. So that's pretty interesting.
They'll also pick you up getting your garbage can in your underwear though, too, right?
Your garbage can and your
underwear.
In your underwear.
What is that?
All those camera images going out, right?
I don't
He's
know.
trying to be funny about just the fact that if they're shooting out images, they're shooting out all of your privacy, what you're doing around your house, in addition to the Amazon packages being left at your house.
Oh, absolutely, and that's what the movie tries to highlight. Let me see if I can show you what it looks like.
Bring your own phone. Well, your own real phone. When you switch to Google Fi. A phone plan by Google.
Do you think you behave better or worse when you are being watched? I am a believer in the perfectibility of human beings. At the Circle, we can finally realize our potential. When we are our best selves, there isn't a problem that we cannot solve. We can cure any disease, and we can end hunger. Imagine the human rights implications. The possibilities are endless.
Your payment, it was for $78.13 and the bill was for $78.31. Thank you.
You got the job at the Circle.
Have a drink, have a good time, and stay excited. You're at the Circle.
Hello, May. How are you?
Jared here. I'll be doing your training.
When I first started, it took me a few weeks to really get the hang of it. Believe me, you're doing fine.
You should come visit me at work sometime.
You might think I was there to clean the toilets. Everyone really likes you.
Your work's been exemplary, strong ratings, but your absence at several events. Sorry, my dad had an episode and I was home helping out.
Is that related to his MS?
I've been looking into your parents' situation, and I have an idea. I was thinking it would make sense for May's folks to come on the Circle Health Plan.
I want to say how much I value what you've done for my family.
May, you're a valued part of the Circle. We care about everybody you care about. May's only been with us for a few months, but she has made quite an impression. So, May, do you think you behave better or worse when you are being watched? We have cameras in place all over the world right now.
Watching you.
We used to go on adventures. We used to have fun and see things, and now it's all filtered through this. Does this really seem okay to you?
Watching you.
I didn't create this. This is not what I had in mind.
Watching you.
Things at the Circle, they need to change.
Watching you.
Everything recorded, seen, broadcast is stored and analyzed here. They can use it however they see fit, no matter what it's cost. Knowing is good, but knowing everything is better. So, May, is there anything you want to tell us?
So I think it does a great job at presenting exactly the good and bad, good things. You see who stole your packages. Bad things, your underwear, or whatever, right? Yeah. But the amazing thing to me is there was not a whole lot of discussion when that movie came out. I was expecting all kinds of people to discuss what was going on because it's happening. I mean, that's amazing. What's happening? Notice I've got the camera running right now, and I'm going to put that on YouTube. So that's more stuff for the FBI to watch. Right? I used to work. My second duty station was the NSA. So I was at the NSA for 4.5 years, where I was primarily translating from German to Russian. But you're basically trusting the people that are there to follow the law. And they're the ones that have to decide whether they're following it or not. So yeah, we've got a lot of interesting technologies that are changing the way we live our lives. Drones. People are buying these, and then they're flying them around the neighborhood. I don't know if you've been sitting out on your deck, and you look up, and there goes a drone, and it stops and looks at you. Hi. No, I'm ugly enough, I'm always dressed, so there is not an issue with that, you know. But yeah, you know, did we want drones driving around, scoping out the neighborhood? I know Iran's not happy about them, apparently, etc. And they're, of course, trying to use their own drones, and Israel isn't very happy about that, so that's kind of interesting. But, shall we take a break? Would like to take a break. We've been here for roughly, an hour and a half? So if you want to take 5-10 minutes and then come back. Remember, the bathroom's the female room, the bathroom is on this side and the male on the other. You tell if you're in the right one by the screens.
I'm sorry. Can I ask you something?
Yes. Right. Right.
Because I can watch it.
my friend's house.
Right.
And is it live somewhere, or is it, you have to wait till
No,
it's
I post it and it stays there for as long as the YouTube network lasts.
Oh,
So yeah, so you're welcome to do that. That's why I'm putting it there.
okay, that's what I
For folks
figured.
that can't come.
I know, so I was like, oh.
So attendance isn't like a part of the grade.
No, no. The quiz questions are, so, and you'll find those out by watching the video and hearing what the quiz question was.
Okay, awesome, that's what
So,
I was
yeah,
wanting.
so all the grades are based on
Based
your
on-
emailing
based on
me,
imagine.
response to the quiz, response to the test, and the term paper.
What's happening on September 13th?
Did I mention that?
No, do you have like an outline of what we'll be discussing?
Okay, so if you go onto the web to this page, this is the syllabus. I have each date that we meet and what you should read prior to coming to class. And then I have a link to a video that you should watch. So like for September 13th, I have this video that you can watch. It's about an hour long.
It is my great pleasure to introduce you to AC Grayling tonight. As many of you know, the very premise of the Wheeler Centre.
Interested in it. Watch some stuff. But I haven't done anything.
To the 13th?
No classics. I know
So long as I email everything to
Thoreau,
you.
John Locke, a little bit.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
John Locke.
That's on purpose, so that you could do stuff like that and not worry about this class at least.
So all the assignments that are like due for this class are all gonna be on like Blackboard to know when they're due, or like all on here?
Don't have, yeah, they're on the syllabus. I hate Blackboard actually.
Okay, good.
I did go on Blackboard and start a dialogue or discussion board. If you, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but if you feel like discussing things with other members of the class,
That's cool.
you could go on there and say, hey, he said such and such. I think that's absolutely bonkers. Do you think, he was right? Or, whatever, you can.
And the reading, what page did you say it was on that changed?
Oh, the very first one for tonight says 21, but it's not on page 21. It's on 351, I think. Or 3.
351?
So
Okay.
it's the apology.
I just wanted to make sure before I read the wrong thing and come in and be like, I read this, and you don't talk about it. I'll be like, oh, never mind.
Oh, I probably missed that part. Sorry, I went to the UAA building in Eagle River at first.
Yeah, we're
Getting
not.
that we're
Yeah,
not there, and
we
then
don't have the
after
lease
coming
on that
here.
anymore. So yep.
Yeah. So you're saying that's not the right thing?
Oh, the apology is the right thing.
Yeah.
And
But
in
not-
fact, you could actually read the whole apology right here. It's on the web too.
Okay. But
Socrates has
those
been dead for
pages is-
2,000 years. So
Okay.
he has no copyright.
But those pages, the 21 to 37.
That's wrong. It's instead, think page 531.
Yeah, 531.
It's right here.
Oh, okay. So it's the same thing and work as clicking on that.
Well, it's not, actually. They're the same thing, but they're different.
Oh, okay. So we read them both.
No. The reason they're the same thing is because they're translations of the same dialogue from Plato.
Okay.
But they're different translations. Each translation is somewhat different than another, unless they're plagiarizing. In which case, and in fact, I thought it was fun. One winter break, I went onto a tool on the web that lets you experiment with the Greek, and I did my own translation. So that's even more different. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
Do you speak any other languages?
Yes.
Which language?
Creole.
Creole. So do you have any texts in Creole that you read?
Scriptures.
Okay. So is there a difference between that and the King James Bible? Well, yeah,
Just like
the one is in
there's
Creole,
multiple different.
the other is in Elizabethan English.
Right.
And there are other translations of the Bible too. And they're different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are similarities, right? It's telling the same story maybe.
But in the mindset of the person writing it.
That's an interesting question. So I mentioned that I was a translator for the Army for my first career. And my languages were Russian, German, and French. And what's pretty clear to you when you're doing that is that there's no absolutely correct translation. It's an art to try to translate what's going on. And going from the one language into the other is going from one culture into another, and it doesn't just come right over. They're not exactly word for word, right? In fact, there's some expressions that just don't make sense if you translate it word for word. You have to figure, what are they trying to say? In this language, it would be more like this. And there's some, so this is fun. Everybody knows the story that Jesus walked on water. Yes? You've heard that, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried it? Is it easy to walk on water? It's kind of difficult, right? Especially if it's not frozen. Obviously, a lot less problem if it's frozen. I don't think Jesus had that problem, right? Frozen water. I don't think so. Well, I looked up